we've spoken before about Man City's interest in AC Milan midfielder Tiani Reyners, of course, and at the time of recording, he's yet to sign to City, but deals does seem to be advancing on that one. And another player who could be heading to the Etihad is Lyon attacker Rayan Cherki. It's understood that City are confident of completing a deal for the 21-year-old Frenchman for a fee sort of in excess of 30 million euros. And so it's expected that this deal will advance quite quickly this week. Obviously, they want to try and get players in now before the Club World Cup starts. So what do you make of this deal, Stephen? How excited are you that he could be joining City? Seems an exciting prospect, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think it was something like 37, 38 goals and assists last season. Just stupidly talented. Yeah, look, as I was just saying, he's the kind of footballer that makes you fall in love with football. A real throwback of a footballer, a streets don't forget kind of footballer, but of high level quality. There is a real magic to his game, and look, I don't know if he'll become one of the best players in the world, but technically he probably already is. You know, he's of that level of ability where not many in football can match him full stop already. Obviously, there's a big gap between being one of the best footballers and being one of the most technical complete footballers and one of the best footballers because the best put it together all the time. There's a reason people like Adel Tarabat or whatever, never got really much further than cult status at QPR despite being ridiculously gifted because they didn't quite have the mentality or the focus or the consistency. There's a long way between Tarabat and Messi or Tarabat and De Bruyne, people like that. And look, Cherki is an absolute superstar in France right now. You know, he's having a breakout season with immense contributions all over the pitch. And the thing that excites me is it's not just the fact that, we see players that you can play, you know, the threaded through ball. You can see some who can put a really nice cross in, but then you get people like Kevin De Bruyne who can just do a reverse no look pass, or you can pass it past six defenders against Stoke when we won 7-2 to the back post of Sane, or you can whip a bullet crossing from absolutely nowhere, or just half volley at 50 yards into an on-running Raheem Sterling. Like De Bruyne was so complete. And Cherki, look, he's not quite got the same power as De Bruyne, but he does have a sort of range that's not too dissimilar. I've seen him play 50-yard passes right onto someone's on running feet. I've seen him play like reverse passes with his left or right foot, or he's done a sort of Travella cross and he found the forward at the back post just totally unexpectedly. Like disguised passes everywhere, 2-footed. Uh, Wonderful dribbler, like genuinely, like he reminds me a little bit of Hazard actually, the way he moves. Maybe not quite as electric in terms of pace as Hazard, but not far off. Fast, great dribbler, 2-footed, just remarkable vision. I honestly think Guardiola, and the rumors are it's Guardiola's actual that he wants him. It's Pep's idea, which gets me excited because all the discourse around him is like, oh, he's not a Pep player. Pep does give the keys to special footballers. He does. That's the thing about Guardiola. If you're special, he will give you the keys because he understands magicians need to be treated that way. So if he's as good as he thinks he is, or as we think he is, and Guardiola likes him, I think he could be really special. I think everything could go for him. And given City are playing against low blocks all the time these days, yeah, this guy is magic. How far you go, it depends on him because many a talented footballer haven't quite reached their potential. He reminds me a little bit of Sami Nasri, actually. The Sami Nasri at Arsenal, really gifted, but Nasri always had slight focus issues and stuff and so on. Um, yeah, and if Nasri had to see the work rate of De Bruyne, who far knew how far he could have gone or whatever. But Cherki, yeah, let's see how good he could be because I think Guardiola is going to bring him in, and I think he's going to put him probably on the left or right. I don't think he'll put him as a number 10. He might do, but I think he's played a lot on the right for Lyon. And he was effective there, but then he drifts all the way across the front line. But he can play anywhere really. You can put him as a false nine; he'd be fine there as well. Just a ridiculous footballer, and I can't wait to see him in a City shirt because he's so versatile. So many different ways to break down a team. Be it his insane vision, left or right foot, great burst of speed, incredibly quick feet in tight areas. Slows the game down perfectly, delays the pass just enough to get those passing channels open. Lovely flicks and awareness. Yeah, he's just a special footballer, and only 35 million allegedly because he's his contract and so on, and a gentleman's agreement with his club. Look, I can't speak highly enough. He's like you sort of deciding you'd make on FIFA for your dream team kind of thing, and I can't wait to see him in a City shirt if it happens because I think he could be a really, really special footballer. I'm just looking at what he's achieved this season as well. Yeah, Europa League and Player of the Season, Europa League Team of the Season, the top assist provider in the competition, League One Team of the Year, League One top assist provider, Dribble of the Year, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, fantastic season. As you said, he's sort of can play on the left, can play on the right as a winger. He can also play as a number 10. It's been reported that he's sort of one of City's top targets for the number 10 position, but that versatility is something that will really appeal to City and Guardiola. 12 goals, 20 assists in 44 appearances. He had a really good season. He's been called up to the France squad as well for the first time. So lot to get excited about for him. As impressive as he has been, it has been sort of claimed that his temperament and defensive work rate is considered by some as a bit of a weakness to his game. And Thierry Henry, who of course coached him for the France under 21s, he sort of warned interested suitors that he needs to sort of receive some tough love from whoever's managing, and just needs to be encouraged to work harder defensively. So is that maybe a little bit of a concern, or do you think Guardiola can be the right manager to sort of harness his potential going forward?
It's entirely down to Cherki what he wants. Look, he's 21 years old, so I feel like he's been around for a long time, but he is still very much, he's very young and he's never played at the level that City are about to put him at, in terms of the intensity of the Premier League. And it's it's probably a little bit easier to be the big fish in this. A small pond is not quite fair to Lyon, but the smaller pond, compared to the Premier League at Lyon and be the superstar. Under Guardiola, you go there to learn. Look, De Bruyne, David Silva, Gundogan, they're all excellent footballers and they're all excellent consummate professionals. But they definitely worked harder after meeting Guardiola because they were all tens or whatever. Oh, Gundogan was more of an eight, but the two of them, the other were tens. They became false eights where they were box to box and running and harrying and so on, and just doing their job for the side. And we're bringing in Pep Linders as well, obviously Klopp's former assistant. He's going to make him work. He's going to have to work, and ultimately it'll come down to Rayan Cherki if he wants to put those miles in. I do think it's worth a go because I think he's so majestically talented that if you can just get a song out of him in terms of just activating the press, being one of the first to press, doesn't have to be, Fernandinho midfield and harrying. It doesn't have to be Bernardo Silva ways, relentlessly chasing everyone down because there is a space for someone who doesn't have to do that. Look at Messi walking around the pitch under Guardiola, waiting to pounce, and even De Bruyne to an extent doesn't have to run quite as hard as everyone else. He's played off Haaland for the last few years because he's Kevin De Bruyne. I think he'd be in a very similar role potentially, where he's allowed to be, part of the press at the front, but we're not expecting him to do anything other than keep the shape of the team, really. And I'm sure he will do. I think he realizes that if he's smart, he'll realize that this is his chance to be one of the best in the world, one of maybe one of the greatest. He really could be that good given his natural talent. Obviously, Henry said that. There are some coaches. Apparently, he's ex-Lyon coach. I think it's Sage, is it? I think there's something like that. I can't remember. But he came out and said he's actually a really nice guy. And I've got the name wrong there probably. That he was expecting to be a lot more awkward than he is. Lacazette came out and praised him an awful lot as well. Said he's a really nice guy to work with. He might not be the hardest trainer. But what I do know is that he's an absurdly gifted footballer who impacts games. And given that City are probably going to really try and assert the control thing again, with the likes of Rangers coming in and we're linked to Rayan Cherki as well, left back, who's a very technical footballer. You think City are going to try and build, with Rodri coming back as well, build a side that can really smother teams again and camp outside boxes. At that point, you'd have to do a lot of defending. So if you can have Cherki in your team, then that will make a massive difference. And look, maybe if we play a big side one day and you're playing against Arsenal or something like that, maybe that's where Cherki, he might be on the bench a little bit. You might put the runners in. He can work a little bit harder. But yeah, the question marks will be there until they're not there. But I think Cherki is going to City if he does because he wants to challenge himself, because he wants to learn from the very best. He wants to fulfill his potential, and it becomes a habit eventually. If you keep doing something, all he's got to do is give it a few months of trying really hard, and before you know it, it'll be part of who he is. And I'm sure if the success and plaudits come, that'll be the affirmation that he needs to carry on in that direction. Look, if it doesn't work, 35 million quid, we'll probably still get a lot of that money back. But I think it's worth the risk because, given how talented he is.
Yeah, and do you think it's with the move of Florian Wirtz now off? Do you think it's almost a no-brainer considering Cherki's quality and the fact that it'll be significantly cheaper than someone like Wirtz?
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that he's just as naturally talented as well. Look, different leagues, different levels, but statistically, like I've seen those sort of data maps where they show, the stats, they're almost identical, in terms of their influence in the game and so on. And yeah, I think he's a very obvious choice. Some people prefer him, and I think some people think he might be a better player, and I understand that. He looks a lot more two-footed. Look, Verts is very two-footed as well, but even more so. I think he could end up being a better signing given the price. I was reading this morning that Leverkusen are asking for like 130 million quid to Liverpool, and maybe City did pull out for financial reasons. you get Reinders and Cherki for like 90 million all in, like, and that's a lot of money, of course. But in 2025, that is incredible value. Like, probably the most gifted playmaker coming out of League One. Well, not probably, definitely, and the best midfielder in Italy. You know, that's a massive increase in technical ability for City, and for average of 45 million each. Look, 70 million pounds is what we're allegedly quoted for the likes of Gibbs White and Livramento these days, you know, and look, they're very good players, but it just shows you how expensive everything is. So that would be a cracking deal.